Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day? Ain't it a great day?
Hello everyone, my name's Dean. Let's talk crypto. This is where you subscribe for daily Bitcoin updates and technical analysis. We track the price of Bitcoin as a proxy for the cryptocurrency markets at large. Today is July 19th, 2025, and I debated whether or not to make this video because I don't know. This is purely speculative, and I'm not coming to you with the same level of conviction that I typically have when I say this. Obviously, we're gonna go over Bitcoin as per usual, and we're going to go over Bitcoin dominance, we're going to go over the total 3 chart, but one of the reasons I wanted to make this video was because I'm seeing very few, select few altcoins that are poised and ready to run on support and don't really have many moves to the downside left. So the only thing that makes sense is that they run before Bitcoin even does 15% down. They can't even, there's nowhere to go. They've done all the requisite basing, correcting to the downside. So that's what I want to talk about. Maybe as soon as, 24 to 48 hours from now, we see some massive moves in a select few altcoins, and I'm going to show you one such example. If that sounds interesting to you, then watch till the very end. Hope everyone's having a great day. Let's get started with Bitcoin as per usual. All right, nothing's changed here. My analysis has been pretty consistent. I'm still looking for 100K, and I'm not really surprised that we're showing weakness here. This is quite weak here with, wrong tool, with the rounded top, right? And a lot of wicking to the upside here. There's a big wick there, big wick there, big wick there. Let's zoom in. We should be on the 4-hourly time frame. So yeah, you can see there's a lot of rejection to the top. Yeah, this is a big rejection to the top. This is another rejection to the top, another rejection to the top. Like, Bitcoin's not looking good here. Now, is it just gonna dump immediately? I don't think so. I think, as usual, when you get these big moves, you typically get them at market open. You don't necessarily get them during off hours, especially if it's a big asset like Bitcoin. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't get something going as soon as market open, late Sunday evening, New York time, right? Where pre-market orders are taken. So yeah, that's Bitcoin. Nothing really changes. Not looking bullish. If you're bullish on Bitcoin, good luck. But look at this. I mean, this looks terrible. This looks terrible for continuation to the upside. If anything, you're just looking at more of this before a big declension. So that's Bitcoin. It's kind of there. But it's important to consider Bitcoin because, right, whatever Bitcoin does, the market will follow. And right now, at least for the next 24 to 36 hours, 36 hours? Yeah, something like that. 24 to 36 hours, Bitcoin is ranging, okay? So if Bitcoin ranges, it's pretty much allowing for other assets to move. Now, in Bitcoin season, you do not, absolutely not, get any significant movement from a large tranche of altcoins if Bitcoin doesn't also provide that upside liquidity. So what I'm trying to say is this: unless Bitcoin moves up, you're not going to see altcoins move up, right? in Bitcoin season. Bitcoin has to initiate, it has to show the way, and then altcoins typically follow. Obviously, this is for most cases. There are always some outliers. But in alt season, I've given a few characteristics of alt season. Here's another one. During alt season, you may find that Bitcoin goes sideways. Meanwhile, a random select few altcoins, a decent group, just start running like crazy. That is alt season behavior. And it doesn't necessarily have to be all altcoins. This is a tricky bit. And this is also why you have to do analysis of each and every asset in your portfolio, because not everything moves at the same time. So, that being said, we have the precursor, we have the context, the market context for what I'm about to say later on in the video. Okay? So Bitcoin's ranging. I'm expecting it to continue to range somewhat for the next 36 hours or so. My stochastic RSI momentum indicator on the 4-hourly time frame is in oversold territory. So yeah, on the hourly time frame, also in oversold territory. Wouldn't be surprised if you continue to, range and play in this range. All right, so that's Bitcoin. Nothing's really changed. But yes, at market open, I'm expecting that move to 100K at or soon after market open. All right. When we talk about altcoins on this channel, I've typically referenced the total 3. I like the total 3 because I don't have to look at any altcoin in particular. I don't have to talk about, every single altcoin. I could just look at the aggregate chart. And I think it's very helpful to get a decent idea as to what's going on in the altcoin space. I think it's relatively accurate. Obviously, we have certain altcoins that we're bullish on, certain altcoins that we're not so bullish on, given the individual analyses. But the total 3 gives a decent idea as to what's happening. And I'm still of the opinion that altcoins are likely to retrace before a massive move up, right? So generally speaking, in aggregate, altcoins in bulk have hit a top, and they're looking at a minor retracement back to this level of support, right? Broken resistance here, now flipped into support there. I like that read. Hasn't changed. Again, most altcoins are at resistance. This is a resistance area. This is a big resistance area. It's 500 days of resistance. It's resistance even here. That's resistance. You want to sell resistance, you buy support. That hasn't changed. I want to preface what I'm about to say with this general altcoin analysis. And this is another good point. You can't do general analysis and do accurate analysis on the specific assets in your portfolio. This is a great example of how general analysis will get you so far, but you have to know very precisely what the particular assets in your portfolio are doing, because not everything's doing the same thing at the same time. Even more importantly during alt season, because in alt season, you got runners moving at different times. So you got to be careful. All right. Bitcoin dominance. You are at the bottom of this channel, as I said before. Let's do 4-hourly. You're at the bottom of this channel, and I do expect that to eventually come back to this midline as altcoins retrace, as Bitcoin retraces. Still not changing my view on that. But we're going to have to do a little bit of consolidation here, a little bit of accumulation here. On the 4-hourly time frame, the idea that we're already overbought tells me, one, that there's more consolidation to be had. Two, that you may get slightly lower levels in whatever consolidation range you're forming. That's important. So I'm not expecting Bitcoin dominance to just shoot up, i.e., I'm not expecting altcoins generally to just dump anytime soon. When I say anytime soon, I mean like within the next 36 hours. I'm expecting that to go with Bitcoin. So on the smaller time frames, I'm looking at Bitcoin dominance and I'm seeing a range play out, but that isn't finished. So again, the technicals are telling me that we're kind of in limbo. Bitcoin showing me limbo. Altcoins generally on the total 3 are showing me limbo. They're at a top. They're kind of still hovering at that top. And this Bitcoin dominance chart is telling me it's not quite ready to pump up, i.e., Bitcoin isn't necessarily ready to dump, nor are altcoins ready to dump. Not quite yet. Still some consolidation to be had. All right? So, that being said, it's very important to understand the context of all of this. There are certain altcoins that are very, very close, in my opinion, to some big moves because they're at real support. And I'm going to use one asset as an example. Again, this is not saying buy this. This is extremely speculative, and please follow what I'm about to say. I'm just going to give my reasoning. It just makes sense, but again, be very careful because my overall analysis on the higher time frame, and I always rest on the overall higher time frame analysis. I think that's more reliable. That's to be bearish, short-term bearish, given what Bitcoin's doing, what the total 3 is doing. I'm short-term bearish on pretty much everything. But I'm telling you, when I'm looking at this particular asset, and given the overall, this particular asset and others, but I'm not going to talk about the others, because again, I don't want people to FOMO into stuff randomly. But when I'm looking at this particular asset, I'm considering its particular chart. I'm considering what Bitcoin's doing, what altcoins, total 3 is doing, what Bitcoin dominance, where it's at. I'm saying there's a chance. And here's why. All right, this is the high time frame analysis of Alice. Anything I analyze, whether for clients or myself, I always start on the high time frame. Okay, high time frame, you are at the lowest possible point, right? This is on the weekly time frame. Before I even look at the technicals, I do a brief, really cursory fundamental analysis to make sure it's legit and it's not complete garbage. Then I look at the technicals, and this chart looks to me like something that is legitimate, technically speaking, because you have this falling wedge that I have right here, and in that falling wedge, you have 3 consolidations, or sorry, 3 corrections, 3 pairs of corrections. And if you follow the channel, I cite AB base theory by by Ralph Nelson Elliott. Not many people know about it, but it's very, very useful. It talks about it. It's basically the fact that in any consolidation, whether it's an accumulation or a distribution, you typically can spy AB bases. That's what he says. He calls it AB base theory. So meaning this is A, this is B, and then you could say this is alpha, this is beta, this is small a, small b. And me, I've taken this and I fleshed it out. And my personal derivative theory on Ralph Nelson Elliott's AB base theory is that you typically see 3 of these AB base pairs, and that usually signifies a completed consolidation. Okay, so that's one thing that gets me excited, right? Okay, we had a bear market declension and then a bunch of consolidation. And then that consolidation in particular has 3 pairs. Again, 1, 2, 3 of AB bases. So usually flat corrections. And so you have 3 flat corrections. A, B, A, B, A, B. Boom. So I'm ready. I like this. I like the fact that it's a falling wedge. Falling wedges are typically the most bullish patterns that you see in technical analysis. They break up more likely than not, more than any other pattern. Okay? So falling wedges are amazing. You typically see them in super bullish assets. That's number one. That's high time frame, 36,000 feet analysis. Now, I jump down into the daily and I focus my attention on this final pivot or this final AB base pair, right? You went up, you came down. What of that? That is interesting to me, okay? It's finished. It's complete. It's nice. It's clean. You went up from support, you came down on support. And from there, you went back and you're pretty much at the neckline. But what are you going to do at this neckline? So this is really important because I really try to talk myself out of this. I really try to say, Dean, I think you're just getting really excited. It's been thousands of days since you've been waiting for this moment. I think you're just trying to jump the gun here. Just relax. Just stick to the plan. The plan is that we're waiting for a pullback first, and that pullback will be initiated by Bitcoin. It's going to take everything down to a certain level. Then you want to get in, and then we ride. I talked myself, hey, relax, Dean. But I couldn't do it. I got excited because, look, you came down, and then how did you go up? Well, you went up very sensibly. So let's just look at this real quick. This, you could say it's a range in and of itself. Okay? It's a range in its own right. And actually, I would draw it a little differently. Let's do it properly. So I'm going to take my parallel channel. I'm going to put this in. It's a mini range, but it's a range nonetheless. Okay. Would I pull it there? I pull it down a little bit. Maybe a little bit here. Yeah. Something like this. Okay. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, like, did we do what we needed to do? And I'm referring to, when I say that, I'm referring to this uptrend. Does this uptrend satisfy everything that needs to happen in a range? Very important. Because if it doesn't, then, right, there's no reason to be bullish on this. So we go from the bottom, good, up, you find some resistance at the midline. Very important. From that resistance, you show strength at the midline, and you come back and you retest the midline here. Very important. From that midline retest, you hit the top of the range, more resistance. You start really showing strength. And this, you can see with a bunch of, what do they call them? Doji candles. But if you zoom in, you'll see that it's a really strong showing of strength at resistance. So, 2 things that I'm really compelled by. One, this was previous resistance right here, right? This is where you found some resistance, probably at the 618 of this declension. And after you went up, you came down and treated previous resistance as support. Any uptrend worth its weight, or any uptrend worth talking about, always flips previous resistance into new support. Very important. That, to me, is a sign of legitimacy. When the uptrend just goes and doesn't seem to encounter or respect resistances, you can expect an equal retracement, right? And I talked about this when I was looking at Ethereum. When you don't respect resistances and you're not chopping up, it is not legitimate. You should not expect continuation. But in this case, you had resistance here. You come up, you flip it. You had more resistance here. You come up, you flip it. There's no reason to come back down here. You've done this midline retest. You've done the retest of this right here, bullish reversal pattern, inverse head and shoulders. You flipped that inverse head and shoulders into support. You now flipped the top of the range as support. There's no reason, technically, that this should not continue, in my estimation. Okay, the next part is crazier. Watch this. So, having said all of that, and this is on the intraday, looking at the 4-hourly time frame, smaller time frame, I'm zoom back out, okay, and I say, well, okay, fine, maybe I'll entertain this a little further, right? What if you're correct, Bullish Dean, excited Dean? What then? What kind of targets are we looking at? All right. Well, if we're going up from here, the next logical resistance is going to be such that it enables us to go up and come down to retest this next level of resistance as support. Because now you have this midline, but you can say that this midline doesn't necessarily need to be hit and bounced off from. You can approach it, do a little retracement, and then continue through it. You typically see it when you have these W bottoms. You typically see something like that. And I'm speaking anecdotally, I'm speaking from experience. My experience is kicking in. So it's not one of those midlines that's necessarily going to take you down significantly. What you usually see is that you do encounter some resistance, but then you show strength at these kinds of midlines with the W bottoms, and you hit whatever level to the upside, and then you come back down and retest that higher time frame midline as support. If that were the case, then now I go back to my smaller time frame. I'm really putting all it out. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not gatekeeping anything. I'm showing my whole process here. Obviously, the process changes. You know, I don't know what I'm going to do before I do it, because, you know, tens of thousands of hours of experience come into play, and based off of what chart I'm reading, I'm seeing different things. But in this instance, this is exactly how I would analyze it and how I would ascertain an upside target. So I'm looking. You know what? The actual beginning of this impulse, to me, starts here. You know, and I've said this before, and people were like, dude, you were talking about alt season. It's not alt season yet. For some assets, it is. This may be one such asset where the pure impulse of alt season has already started. And it might have started down there on the 21st of June. Okay? Because you can see here, all that you get are retracements that respect the 0618. You're just getting intra-wave corrections. So instead of these big, nasty corrections to the downside, it's both matriculating to the upside and correcting all at the same time, showing extreme strength. This is an SOS. SOS stands for sign of strength. Impulse, subsequent SOS. No, that's not how I want to draw it. Impulse, subsequent SOS. Basically, one, a pattern trader would call this a bull flag, a bull flag, a bull flag. When you see bull flag after bull flag after bull flag, that's typically how these crazy small cap assets, how they start their reign of terror in alt season. They just start from nothing. Nobody's talking about them. And when you check back after they've done these crazy numbers, you look at their base, you look at where they started, it's typically like that. A bunch of signs of strength on the low time frame, a bunch of sort of intra-wave corrections at all the resistances instead of these big retracements. That's what you get. Just chop, 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 any resistance. Chop, chop, chop. So the next move, I would say, if we're to get a big resistance, it's going to be at the next logical resistance. And it's going to be all the way up here at this purple line. Why? Well, because that would enable this massive, this move to retrace all the way back to the midline with the 62% retracement, which is what you should expect. And that would make sense because now you're heading all the way down, or sorry, you're heading up, all the way up to the resistance of this bear market consolidation. And then, that's your next big resistance. Right now, you're at the bottom of the bear market consolidation. You're at the bottom of the bear market. So the bear market, if you add the drawdown and the consolidation, the ensuing consolidation, you're looking at a 1300-day bear market. That first move out should take you up and out of the bear market consolidation. That's always the big first move of any asset. That's across the board. Takes you out of the bear market consolidation and then retesting that midline. A lot of other assets that are not necessarily as bullish, right, that feature into that total 3 calculation, where I'm not saying this is looking really bullish, they're over here and they're doing something like this. They're at that midline and then they're retracing. Everything's a little different. This may come at the midline and do one of its signs of strength, pop up and then come down all in one fell swoop, wherein you get the massive move and a massive retracement. There are other such altcoins. I'm not going to mention them because I don't want people to think I'm running some sort of pump and dump or some sort of, a signal operation. But this is an example of why I would not be surprised if in the next 24 to 36 hours we may see some crazy moves in the altcoin space, and I don't want you guys to get confused. The overall analysis stands, but alt season is characterized also by a random runner because that's how bullish we are. And people will think, oh, that's so random. What's going on with Alice? What news came out with Alice? It's all in the charts. So if this does happen, it's purely there in front of us. And yeah, that's exciting because if Alice does it, then there are other assets like Alice that are also going to do it. Okay? So that's all I've got. Hope this was helpful, useful, entertaining, whatever you want it to be. But yeah, that's it for me. Take care. Like, share, subscribe. If you got value, consider tipping me, Venmo, Litecoin, Cash App, and consider the crypto portfolio mentorship and consultation service where I go through assets like I just went through Alice with you and help to identify assets that are good to buy for this alt season and help to identify targets to the upside, where to buy back, all that stuff. So yeah, that's all at the pinned comment below. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Endeavors to occupy my prevalent time slot. I vocalize, too deep to localize, even when I'm right on the surface. You act surprised how I work this, but I can't lie. Many a good alibi. I'll catch you later.
Visions are vividly enhanced with emphasis and amethyst to develop morale advantages which help us manifest magnanimous. We body vitals like evangelists. So listen when you're dealing with people who be revealing premonitions with precision. At least that's what I'm aiming at for now. I speak the language of the world, meandering throughout the crowd. Used to feel safe to say anything, but now it's a risk. It's hard for me to let go when all I can do is reminisce. Gone like the wind, here's where I begin. Should I smile or should I grin what's happening?